impersonation. I think my job is...
I have to make you look good.
Okay, yes, indeed. Thank you. And thank you for those really nice words.
My pleasure. Came from the heart.
I can tell.
Now, we are 1 year away from Star Wars 50th. It's been 50 years. And it's hard to imagine a world where Star Wars doesn't exist, or a world where there is no C-3PO. And yet, I understand that you almost missed your rendezvous with destiny. What happened?
Well, yes. Okay. It is 1975, and I had been acting for a couple of years on radio, television, and stage, pretty much. And I was doing really quite well. I don't think I was out of work. And I was with an agency that had, as a client, Sir Alec Guinness. And when you're with a big agency, they get a script and they kind of pass it around to everybody. And so I went to my agent who saw this thing that requires somebody who was small, who controlled their body, whatever, and above all was cheap. Because at that time, I only knew whatever. And so she spoke to me about this thing. It was made by an American person, and it was science fiction, and it was low budget, and the part was for, and she actually paused, for a robot. Low budget, science fiction, cheap, robot. And I said, and she said, well, anyway, you see, I was a serious actor. I know, it's a long now. She said, no, so there was a missing word, stupid, go and meet him. So I went, out of politeness. It wasn't a big stretch from the there's a 2 Soho Square in London where 20th Century Fox had an office. And I knew I was going to meet some ghastly American, some you met them too. Like cigar smoking gross producer that you see in films. And the door opened and I went in, politely. And there was George Lucas, about my size, shy, quiet, timid, really nice face, and exhausted. He'd been seeing every actor in the world for every role, whatever. So we had this really strange conversation, or not, because I didn't want to be there. He was fed up of seeing actors. He really didn't have actors up to there. Fed up of people walking in, being robots, and he's going like, no, I can't, just need to talk. Just talk about this. Anyway, so we spoke for quite a few minutes, and kind of, I was thinking, well, and he probably was too. And then, on the wall of the office were paintings by Ralph McQuarrie, I learned. And one of them was of the character, and I walked over and said, is this the character? And
we have that painting here. Maybe we should put that up.
Here we go. We walked over, the Kinesis.
That's what we have here. If we could cue the next slide.
I'm going to have to act out the whole thing. We will arrive, and when you said something very peculiar happened, because there was what I know would be. Okay, so I looked at that painting from across the office, and somehow Ralph McQuarrie put into his artwork, and every time I say it now, there's a strange forlorn, yearning quality about 3PO in this picture that is kind of beckoning me to come into the frame, or he wants to come out of the frame and join me. And the bleak surroundings of the picture also add to that sense of space of loneliness and between the planets and the distance. And I was absolutely entranced by it. I always joke that I've seen the Mona Lisa in Paris, and it's crap. It doesn't speak to me at all. It's like this painting spoke to me. And so that was the end of the interview, and then they sent the script round to my house, and I'd never read a film script before. I was so naive. I didn't understand anything. I mean, Star Wars on paper, it's a nightmare. But every time I found this character called C-3PO, he was doing something interesting, something painful, dreadful, whatever. I really liked the character. I had nothing to do with him at that time. The next day I went back. I was not so calm. I sat there. We talked about my disinterest in, George and I, in science fiction. I walked out of 2001 Space Odyssey. It's now one of my favorite films. I grew up, you know, I saw too young. So we talked for an hour, and around the character a bit, and then there was a pause, and I said, please may I play the part? And there was another pause, and when George went, sure. It wasn't even a word. Sure, it sounded like, you know, or something. And that sound changed my life.
Well, and changed history. So, I'm going to jump ahead to you're in Tunisia and beginning filming. And
This is where it gets bad.
well, you know.
But it got bad from the beginning because the next day somebody said, can you go to Elstree Studios to be cast? And I thought, well, that's why I'm here. Cast. No, she meant go there, take your clothes off, meet two builders who are going to slap you around with plaster of Paris and make a model of your body. It's one of the grossest experiences of my life.
They had to lather you with Vaseline before they put the mask on.
Well, they said to me, oh, you haven't shaved then? And I went like this. And they said, no, your body, because, you know, it's going to stick to you. I actually was bold enough to say, you know what, can somebody get some saran wrap? And I ended up covered in Vaseline, cling film, saran wrap. Do you know when you need something in the refrigerator and you forget about it? Last night's dinner, I looked at this crunchy packet of decomposing food. I felt my dignity, I have to tell you, my dignity at that point, totally zero. But we'd agreed that in the 6 months it took to make the costume, that we would have time in the studio with mirrors, with cameras, so I could see what I could do with all this stuff. I tried it on for about 10 minutes at Elstree Studios. No, it has to go straight out to committee. The next time I saw it, it was on two trestle tables in a tent in the desert. Already sand is everywhere. Yes. I'm just panicking, hate sand. It's a bit of a pathetic line for a Jedi to say.
We're not here to talk about
Okay. So there I am, and we started actually. We started. So I'm wearing leotards and tights with patches of embroidery with wires, so you could not see the tights. So we started off with a kind of corset thing here, and then the pants thing came on top of like that, and then a leg and a leg and a foot, and then the chest, which was in two bits, which kind of went. And this is where it began to get sinister. Because they put two bolts there and on the side. So suddenly I'm in a carapace, or whatever you call it. And then the arms came up, and the arms, and then the hands, and then the neck, and then my head. And that was scary. And suddenly, I'm now in a complete costume, which took 2 hours to put on. And already I'm out, because it pinched everywhere. And then 3PO was complete. And I had entirely lost my identity. Suddenly, I had no sense of where I was anymore, and could only see, like through binoculars, you know. I completely lost my sense of humanity. It was very odd.
But I would imagine a bit is you having some flexibility.
Oh, you're like these reporters who say, did you get the part because you fit the costume? You don't have to do any acting because I'm the costume, that's your part. Let me do all this. Is it hot in the costume? How do you go to the bathroom in the costume? You're slightly on a level with voice. Okay, various things happened. We use our hands a lot as human beings to gesture and touch our faces and so on. 3PO's arms, because of under here, cannot go further than that. So anything beyond can't do it. Also, his hands were black cotton gloves with very heavy sculpted aluminum that dangled. I mean, they're absolutely useless. So if you watch these films, you'll see that they don't work. And I had no peripheral vision, either sideways or up or down. And I hadn't had any rehearsal. And suddenly I'm over there by the sound corps, and George says, action. His enthusiasm at this point, I mean, he worked very hard, he was exhausted. And I so screwed up the first line, which was, why, sir, my first job was programming binary derivatives, village semiconductor calculators in middle respects. Well, I was used to Shakespeare, and this was not Shakespeare. And I messed up 3 times, and eventually George walked from the camera and kind of stared into 3PO's eyes, actually looking directly at my left ear, because he couldn't see where my eyes were. And he said the immortal line to me, don't worry about the voice, we can fix it later. You can say anything you want. I have never been in a production where you're allowed to say anything you want.
Well, speaking of the voice.
I mean, it was so bad, I had no idea who I was. Just before that, I said to the continuity girl, as I'm speaking, there was a little slot in 3 minutes. A little slot in his face. I asked him to take a Polaroid and hold it up. Could you hold it a bit higher? And I looked at the Polaroid of 3PO's face, and I kind of absorbed it, and then we began to shoot. That was my rehearsal.
But let's go to voice, because George didn't originally have your voice in mind for this character.
I learned that 6 months later. So when he said, don't worry about the voice, you'll fix it later, what he meant was, I hate your performance already.
In fairness to you and to him, he just had a different vision for that character because he wanted to have an American accent. But
imagine 3PO in America.
It didn't wind up that way because he saw the light.
Well, when you show an actor a script, they will interpret it in their own way. And then the director has to guide everybody together to get the same kind of play going on. That you don't want actors shooting in different directions on their own.
Sure.
So he did have this vision of 3PO. I didn't know this. He never said, can you do a New York accent?
So how did that voice develop? Where did it come from?
I had 6 months working on the costume and on the script, and I thought forever, back then it was Daleks, people don't like that. And I went through a whole series of things. And then the script, I absorbed the script, I absorbed the situations 3PO was put in. He was never in the right place, always at the wrong time, and never with people who were calm and quiet, never. So he was always out of his own milieu. And he was very tense because of that. He was afraid, I think he was afraid for the humans, and he was tense or whatever. So when you do that, your body becomes tense, and I have to tell you. So if I'm doing the voice, even without the costume, this gets tense, this gets tense, this gets tense. And gradually, the voice comes higher up, out of your throat, and also speaking slightly pedantically, you become C3PO. Normally you can say that at that time, I had a little microphone here, and a wire that went right down my back, and a transmitter pack in the back of my as it were, butt section. So all the way through that movie, I'm talking to you out of my ass.
We're going to move ahead to Star Wars comes out, it's a huge success. A year later, you're approached about doing another one.
I think it's common knowledge that the entire cast, and indeed most of the crew, thought that this weird space film was too weird to ever hit a screen. Nobody understood in England, because most of it was shot in England. Obviously the desert is only 2 days here, but Elstree Studios is where it happened. The crew didn't understand George's approach, and the atmosphere was not great. It was heavily unionized at the time, cut takes, they could ring the bells and you had to go home. Even though there was like one more line to say, it wasn't a comfortable shoot. Also, we had the hottest summer in history in England. The roads were melting, there was no water. I was in a studio with incandescent lights churning out heat. I am in the suit. I was like microwaved every day. And all the time people were coming up to Carrie and Mark and Harrison, crimping them and I was just dissolved in sweat, literally down to my little routines. So, and more painfully, I will say, because I think when the film opened, I was completely negated. I had no publicity. They gave out that the robot was mechanical, that I had no. If you look at the credits, my name kind of whizzes past. I wasn't allowed to exist. So for the second time, I'd lost my humanity. Once during filming, and now perpetually. For months and months, everybody wanted to talk about Star Wars. I wanted to talk about anything but. It was a very, very painful time. And rude and cruel. I might as well say it. Lucasfilm, 20th Century Fox, they weren't very nice. So when they came to me and said...
Because before I arrived there, wouldn't have happened.
So when they came and said, oh, we're making another film, I really had to think about it. It had not been great shooting it. It had not been great afterwards. Nobody knew I existed. So they came, and I had to make a decision. And I came to 2 thoughts. One, it was a job, that I kind of understood some of the parameters. The other was that I had become immensely fond and caring of C-3PO. Therefore, I took the job. Was I right?
We're very happy that you did. And you got the script and you learned that it was a very different proposition from the first script.
So I agreed, then I got the script. And then well, not horror, but in the first film, I had spent all those weeks making a relationship with something about as interesting as this, R2-D2. Hey, I'm serious. What I didn't understand, and nobody told me in 6 months of preparation, all this dialogue between 3PO and R2, no, R2 doesn't make any noises. You're going to have to say that if you reply. I was devastated. And on the second day, which is the first scene, I had a monologue with R2. Well, for instance, mine, wait a minute, where are you going? Well, what makes you think that the settlement's over there? And I said, George, I said to George, no, I was going to put a sound on later. I was talking, so I said, believe me, it's true. I said, well, could somebody, when I finish my line, could somebody make a noise, like a reply? Could they could you go like, beep or something? Oh, sure. Then we start again. Wait a minute, where are you going? Oh, beep. From then on, I used to do homework writing out what I envisaged for the lines.
So instead of R2-D2, you've got Harrison Ford to deal with.
Yeah.
Sounds more interesting to me.
Well, right at the beginning, he had attitude. With Harrison. And it's Han Solo. So yes, it became a new and different and a challenge, because it started in the first film, because I spotted when we were approaching the Millennium Falcon that Han Solo is doing something, he's wiping his hands, and 3PO began to kind of walk up, and then after they'd gone, Han Solo does something like that. So I said to George, and I wrote this line myself, I said he needs to be triggered to do that, to give that reaction. So I put in, hello, sir. And so that's where it all began. But there we are now with Harrison. It was a terrific dynamic. He was absolutely impatient, and it was theatrically quite right to do that.
Well, it did give rise to one of 3PO's best lines and a response from Han Solo that is also very memorable.
What would that be, Howard?
Well, I'll give you a clue. The Millennium Falcon is being pursued relentlessly by TIE fighters.
Imperial Star Destroyer.
And an Imperial Star Destroyer, and they decide to go into an asteroid field.
And the odds of successfully navigating an asteroid field are approximately 3,720 to 1.
Now, you guys have a rare chance to do dialogue with the actual C-3PO. So, can we have the audience deliver Han's line in response?
Wait! Nobody said action. Jumps the gun.
You can give your line and I'll cue Han.
Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. But sir, the odds of successfully navigating an asteroid field are approximately 3,720 to 1.
Han.
You weren't very good, actually. You know what? I really don't like audiences talking during movies. Today, I'm going to do a Jedi mind trick.
In those 50 years, you've had a chance to experience a lot and reflect a lot. And I was just curious, what is one of the most important things that resonates with you, that stays with you about the entire experience of creating and performing and living this amazing character?
Okay. There's no doubt that 50 years, and remember that I didn't want to be there in the first place. But then I did, and I stayed for the ride, the 3PO. And I have lived with him in so many different iterations, in and out of the costume. And the costume's never, it looks beautiful, but it's never going to work. So that's not a joy. The joy for me is that I have this extraordinary friend. I wouldn't want to live with him all the time, it can be difficult. But he has such wonderful qualities that I think a lot of humans could actually learn from him. People criticize him in The Empire Strikes Back for being prissy, argumentative, defensive, always telling the odd. It's because he cared for his own skin, but the skin of others, his friends, his companions, his human friends, the aliens. He cared, and I think his loyalty and his caring is a great exemplar for humankind. The other thing, which is slightly related, and it's only come to me in recent years from doing events and doing conventions and things, is just what Star Wars meant to so many people, millions of whom I will never meet, thousands I have met, and so many talk absolutely from their soul about what it meant for all all sorts of reasons, their circumstances at home or what they personally were going through. And in particular, 3PO became a friend for many people who were a little nervous of society and so on, people whose circumstances were not great. They found it, they tell me about it. But I love C3PO, but I'm hugely grateful and now understanding of what the audience give to me. And remember, they see it completely different. I don't see the films the way I'm too close. What I have learned is to watch the films through the eyes of the fans. And that has been a huge gift. So, for those people here tonight, thank you very much. There's a scene where 3PO has been blown up. And here's something quite seminal that George and the team think is totally okay to persecute, humiliate, and potentially destroy a droid. So there's a scene where R2 is putting him back together, and 3PO's legs are out there, and R2 is holding a foot. And I wanted to say, well, where do you think it goes? We can get there. But I'm going to tell you how it was done. I'm sitting on a box, feet out like that. Except I'm not sitting on a box, I'm kneeling in a box. And the legs are just placed on the box. And your brain puts the two together. You think, I've spoiled it now.
Well, I think we're going to have to keep you from spoiling anything more for The Empire Strikes Back, because I'm sure not many people have seen it before. And I think we need to call a close to our conversation.
And there's so much.
And let the